Zangrilli has apparently pled not guilty to various felony charges. These include tampering with evidence, offering a false instrument for filing, falsifying business records, and drinking while driving and operating a motor vehicle while impaired by alcohol. In the world of law enforcement, I truly believe that there are a lot of good cops out there just doing their best, working a really tough job. And then there are people like this guy. Allegedly. This is Deputy Inspector Paul Zangrilli of the New York Police Department. He's been recently accused of trying to cover up the crimes of his then-girlfriend Nicole Ruppel when she took his unmarked police vehicle for a joyride with him in the passenger seat. According to Manhattan prosecutors, they had gone out to a bar together one night in the summer of 2022 and got completely sloshed before she got behind the wheel. Not long afterwards, she apparently ended up crashing into a cab before speeding away from the scene. But he wasn't exactly just a passenger here, apparently. According to prosecutors who have recently charged him, immediately following the crash, he took a number of steps to essentially help his girlfriend out. You see, the allegations include that Zangrilli apparently switched seats with his girlfriend right after the collision before they sped away. And so the cab driver, who was understandably upset, caught up with them at a red light and flagged down another police officer. When he did, Zangrilli apparently repeatedly offered the cab driver $500 or $1,000 so that the other driver would agree not to exchange insurance information. And then he dug deeper. Apparently, Zangrilli called a New York Police Department captain and gave a fabricated story of what happened. Zangrilli supposedly said he had been driving alone and was on his way to work when the crash happened. But he wasn't done yet, allegedly. Prosecutors also allege that after he clocked in at work, he called up the owner of the bar he and his girlfriend had visited. And what did he want? Oh, just surveillance footage showing that the Zangrilli and Ruppel had been drinking there for 3 hours before the crash. And more specifically, the surveillance apparently showed that Zangrilli had taken 5 shots and 7 beers before leaving the bar that night. And it also would have shown Ruppel, the girlfriend, drinking 7 shots and 3 beers. Now, when it comes to counting drinks on surveillance footage, this can get tricky because some drinks might look alcoholic, but actually not have any alcohol in them. But when we're talking about shots and beers, that is a little bit more reliable to conclude that what they're drinking on the surveillance footage is probably alcohol. And in a matter of 3 hours, of course, factoring in whatever they may have eaten in the process, that does sound like a bit of alcohol. Even still, Zangrilli has apparently pled not guilty to various felony charges. These include tampering with evidence, offering a false instrument for filing, falsifying business records, and drinking while driving and operating a motor vehicle while impaired by alcohol. Now, I will say it is unfortunate that a man who has apparently been with the police force since around 2008 would throw it all away to cover for what would have been a girlfriend's DUI, with, of course, a side of him getting in trouble for letting her drive his police car while drunk. And I do suspect that, assuming that all of this is true, of course, that may have had something to do with it. See, if he had been totally honest about what had actually happened, allegedly, obviously his girlfriend would have gotten into trouble for drunk driving. But he also would have gotten into a world of trouble for allowing her to get behind the wheel of his unmarked police car, whether drunk or sober for that matter. But that would arguably pale in comparison to the laundry list of things that he is now being charged with here. It's the law of FAFO, or FAFO in spades.
See, as you can see, the more you around, the more you're going to find out.
But I will also say that the fact that he had such a sudden string of just terrible decisions, one immediately following the other, can make one wonder how many other poor decisions he's made as a police officer since his start in 2008. Also, how many other cover-ups has he been involved in? How regularly would he drive his police car drunk, or even worse, allow someone else to drive it drunk? When a story like this breaks, where a police officer has been exposed for a cover-up or a potential cover-up, or has otherwise done some very unsavory things with his or her power and influence as a member of the police force, it can have a serious ripple effect. For example, if you've been watching the content on this channel with any level of frequency over the last couple of months, you know that I've been following the Karen Reed trial out of Massachusetts very closely. And in that case, some horrendous behaviors by members of the police force, both in Canton PD and the Massachusetts State Police, have been uncovered and resulted in a lot of public outrage. One of these is a series of unprofessional and downright disgusting text messages sent by Trooper Michael Proctor, the lead investigator of the case, about the investigation and about the defendant, Not just to colleagues and actually supervisors, but also family and friends, people who have zero business hearing this kind of information in the first place. If you're not familiar, 16 hours into the investigation, he apparently made up his mind that Miss Reed was guilty of murdering her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. And he used that as justification on the stand for exposing information about her sensitive personal information about medical conditions, as well as calling her a quote-unquote whack job and we'll just call it a see you next Tuesday. He also texted colleagues and supervisors about wanting to influence the medical examiner's conclusions about the victim's manner of death. And he also texted them about what he was trying to do in terms of her phone, specifically finding nude photos of the defendant after she had turned it over for investigation. Now, as you can imagine, there has been a lot of public outcry over this, not just for the disgusting nature of what he was saying about the defendant. The outcry has been also over what this said about his inability to be an objective, dispassionate investigator to find the cold, hard truth. And now turning back to the Zangrilli case in New York, this whole thing calls into question his overall willingness to use the privileges of his police badge for his own interests. And to put a bit of a finer point on it, how many other people have been essentially victimized by Zangrilli's alleged corruptive behaviors? The headache for the NYPD and the Manhattan prosecutors is that this can impact quite a few criminal convictions from 2008 to 2022 if Zangrilli has had fingerprints on them. As an example, following the testimony of Trooper Michael Proctor in the Karen Reed case, other past cases that Trooper Proctor has worked on may now be getting a second look. Of course, another thing that is absolutely enraging about all of this, assuming it's true, of course, is the hypocrisy and corruption and abuse of power that it exposes. We always want to think that the people who are entrusted with certain privileges and powers are going to use those for good and will make decisions that are in the best interest of the public. And it's both disheartening and infuriating when bad individuals violate the public trust by lying and trying to cover up crimes that have real victims. It's upsetting for the public, and I would imagine also upsetting for the cops that are actually doing their job in a proper way. But that said, it is nice when people are actually caught trying to game the system for their own benefit and then brought to justice. Now, all of that said, I really should note that as with any criminal or civil case, allegations are just that, allegations. And as we've seen time and time again, someone can come out with an accusation against someone and it doesn't necessarily make it true. I obviously don't have any personal knowledge about this case other than what I've read from the articles that are cited in this video and elsewhere. And so it could very well be that Paul Zangrilli ends up exonerated over this whole thing when the dust clears. But if the prosecution has a cab driver and the bar owner and the surveillance footage Zangrilli tried to get deleted, allegedly, and the testimony from the other police captain that Zangrilli supposedly lied to, that might be kind of hard to overcome. But however this case ends up, I hope that it's a result of a clean judicial process that serves, above all else, true justice. But those are my thoughts. What do you think? Does this sound like Deputy Investigator Paul Zangrilli is cooked? Or do you think that there might be more to the story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this or at least found it interesting or informative. And if you did, I would love it if you could hit the like button. It does help us with the YouTube algorithm gods. And if you're new here and you want to see more content like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can find out when the next video is uploaded. And if you really want to support the channel, consider becoming a member of Byte Club. You can join either through YouTube memberships or by supporting on Patreon. And doing so means that over the long term of this channel, we can continue to devote intensive resources to videos like this one, as well as entire trials and other deep dives. Links to both are in the description below. See you in the next one.